The unbelievable case of Gypsy Rose Blanchard and her mother. Imagine living your entire life believing you're sick, confined to a wheelchair, surrounded by medications, and undergoing endless surgeries, only to find out it was all a lie. This is the heartbreaking true story of Gypsy Rose Blanchard and her mother Dee Dee, a tale that shocked the world and ended in a brutal murder. But what drove Gypsy Rose to such a devastating decision? If you're into chilling real-life mysteries, psychological twists, and stories that make you question everything, hit that like button, subscribe to Cipher, and turn on the notification bell. Let's dive deep into one of the most disturbing cases of modern times. Dee Dee started fabricating illnesses when Gypsy was a baby. From the very beginning, Dee Dee Blanchard claimed that her daughter Gypsy Rose was seriously ill. When Gypsy was just a baby, Dee Dee said she had sleep apnea, and by the time she was 8, the list had grown to include leukemia and muscular dystrophy. She was placed in a wheelchair and fed through a tube. Doctors continued to treat Gypsy for illnesses she didn't actually have. As Gypsy grew older, the fake diagnoses multiplied. Dee Dee told doctors that Gypsy had seizures, asthma, vision and hearing problems, and more. Medical tests often came back normal, but Dee Dee would either switch doctors or insist they weren't doing enough. She had some nurses' training, which helped her sound convincing. Over the years, Gypsy was subjected to surgeries, feeding tubes, breathing machines, and high doses of medication she didn't need, all because of Dee Dee's lies. The result? A childhood stolen by hospital visits, invasive procedures, and a reality that wasn't real. It's hard to imagine the confusion and pain Gypsy must have experienced growing up with no control over her body or her identity. All the while, her mother was praised for being a hero caregiver, soaking in sympathy and support. Gypsy's health was fine. Her mother lied about everything. Behind the scenes, Gypsy Rose was not actually sick. She could walk, didn't need a feeding tube, and definitely didn't have cancer. Her head was bald only because Dee Dee shaved it regularly to maintain the illusion. The feeding tube and wheelchair were props in Dee Dee's twisted play for attention and praise. What Dee Dee was suffering from is known as Munchausen syndrome by Proxy, a psychological disorder where a caregiver makes up or causes illness in another person to gain sympathy. This wasn't just manipulation, it was medical abuse on a horrifying level. Gypsy was taking medications that affected her teeth and overall health, and she had to undergo surgeries that left permanent damage. Her teeth eventually rotted from neglect and were pulled out, yet nobody suspected the truth. Because Dee Dee seemed like a devoted, selfless mother. The world saw a fragile child and a saintly mum, but behind closed doors, it was a prison of lies. Gypsy wasn't allowed to speak freely to doctors. Her mother would answer all the questions, twist facts, and keep her daughter silent with fear. The entire system failed her. Doctors, teachers, even friends and family. People believed Dee Dee because she seemed so devoted. Part of the reason Dee Dee got away with it for so long was her charisma and control. She had just enough medical knowledge to sound credible and knew exactly how to manipulate the system. When doctors questioned her, she quickly moved on to someone else. When family members raised doubts, she isolated herself and Gypsy from them entirely. She also had a tragic backstory that people sympathized with. After Hurricane Katrina, Dee Dee claimed they lost all their medical records in the disaster. Using this as leverage, she moved with Gypsy from Louisiana to Missouri, where she began the cycle all over again. They were gifted a new home by Habitat for Humanity, charity trips to Disney World, and non-stop attention from local news outlets. What made Dee Dee's manipulation even more convincing was how she performed in public, always by Gypsy's side, holding her hand, speaking for her, and crying when telling their story. People believed she was a selfless mother, doing everything she could for her sick daughter. In reality, she was crafting the perfect illusion, and no one saw through it. Dee Dee even lied about Gypsy's age to control her. As Gypsy grew older, she naturally began to question things. But Dee Dee responded with more control, lying about her age and rewriting her birth certificate to make her seem younger. This allowed Dee Dee to keep Gypsy in a childlike role for much longer, limiting her independence and freedom. By her teens, Gypsy was actually a grown woman, but still treated like a helpless child. Dee Dee claimed Gypsy had the mental age of a 7-year-old. She didn't allow her to go to school or socialize. Even her attempts to assert herself were met with punishment, physical abuse, isolation, and fear. In 2009, a neurologist who examined Gypsy suspected Munchausen syndrome by Proxy, but unfortunately didn't follow through with a report. An anonymous tip to Child Protective Services led to a short investigation, but Dee Dee's manipulative charm convinced authorities everything was fine. The missed opportunity could have saved a life. Gypsy tried to escape but was trapped again. Desperate for a way out, Gypsy attempted to escape in 2011 with a man They ran away together, but Dee Dee found them within days. She told the man that Gypsy was a minor, even though she was 19, and convinced him to send her back. Once home, Dee Dee punished her severely, smashing her computer and physically restraining her to her bed. Gypsy has since shared that her mother would hit her and often deny her food. The abuse was both physical and psychological. She learned that no matter what she did, her mother would find her, control her, and hurt her. And worst of all, no one would believe her side of the story. Not doctors, not family, not even the authorities. Gypsy met Nicholas Godijon and plotted Dee Dee's murder. Eventually, Gypsy regained access to the internet and began secretly chatting on a Christian dating site. That's where she met Nicholas Godijon, a man who had mental health issues of his own. Their relationship quickly became intense. She confided everything in him, how her mother had lied about her health, abused her, and stolen her life. In their messages, Gypsy began to fantasize about escaping for good. And then she made a terrifying request to kill her mother. In June 2015, he traveled to Springfield, Missouri, where he entered their home and stabbed Dee Dee to death while Gypsy waited in the bathroom. She says she covered her ears so she wouldn't hear it. After the murder, they fled to Wisconsin. But before long, they were arrested. What shocked the world wasn't just the crime, but the motive. When people learned the truth about Gypsy's life, many began to see her as a victim rather than a killer. Gypsy felt trapped, powerless, and alone. After her arrest, Gypsy explained why she couldn't just stand up and tell someone the truth. She said, "I couldn't just jump out of the wheelchair because I was afraid and I didn't know what my mother would do." She wasn't just physically trapped, she was emotionally brainwashed and mentally exhausted. Gypsy had never gone to school, had no real friends, and was kept in a childlike state all her life. Experts like Dr. Mark Feldman described it best. Her daughter was, in essence, a hostage. Gypsy didn't just kill her mother. She was trying to escape a life of torment, pain, and manipulation. Final thoughts. The story of Gypsy Rose and Dee Dee Blanchard isn't just about murder. It's about manipulation, mental illness, and systemic failure. Gypsy eventually pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and served time. But her real sentence began the day she was born. Today, she's trying to rebuild her life, but the scars, emotional and physical, remain. It's a tragic tale that forces us to ask, how many other victims are out there, suffering in silence while the world applauds their abuser? If this story moved you, leave a comment with your thoughts. Should Gypsy have been punished? Or was she another victim? Don't forget to like, subscribe to Crime Cipher, and turn on notifications for more deep dive stories like this. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.